Okay, so this is a budget 2025, resourcing and supporting our priorities. This is a mix of the budget presentation that I was given by CPS and then how it affects Thorpe. So I'm going to start off with how the funding formula changed. It's very different than what we've had in the last 12 years. So it's very, very different. But for us, it actually turned out pretty good, at least for this first year. So the objectives for today are sharing the new needs-based funding model as opposed to student-based funding model. That's what it's called. We're going to understand the budget context and the district's approach. We're going to find out what it means to Thorpe. We're going to provide guidance and resources for the successful implementation of this budget, and then we're going to set a timeline for engagement, development, and approval. Just to give you an overview, the district is facing an almost $400 million deficit. That's the end of COVID money. And we knew that this was coming. So they're not expecting any type of influx. So it is a little worrisome for them. But they've done some really cool things that I think you guys are going to like. The resources investment strategies that the district's put into place to support is there to support the instructional core. And we know that it's working. We've seen huge growth in reading compared to the country. There's good things happening in Chicago. But despite the district's deficit, they're still maintaining the overall level of funding in the school budget. So that means that they've really cut central office to spend money at the school level. And when we're talking at the school level, we're talking about teachers. This really is a very teacher-rich budget, and I'll explain that in a second. So in recent years, they've augmented SBB, student-based budgeting formulas, by making specific investments focused on equity and district instructional practices. They're moving forward to a streamlined, fully equity-based school funding model for fiscal year 25. And they believe that it will more clearly articulate for schools, families, and communities how the district allocates resources to schools. Their two big areas are first transparency and equity. And in essence, they're letting you know, hey, this is how we fund the schools. This is what we're doing. And then they also want you to know that the schools that need more will get more, right? So we are, and we'll talk about that. Basically, it's best summed up like this. Every student, especially those furthest from opportunity, will experience a challenging, culturally responsive curriculum and access enrichment opportunities and feedback that promotes daily growth. The daily student experience will be joyful, affirming, and meet the student's social emotional needs, prioritizing historically underserved students. So in essence, schools that have higher levels of poverty will get more resources. That's basically what we're talking about. Schools with higher DL students, higher EL students will get more resources. And again, it's all towards making sure that we have a balance of meaningful daily learning experiences, inclusive and collaborative schools and community, building the capacity of the educators, and all of that will support the student growth, and that we'll be able to see that. So this is what the district is aiming for. The continuous improvement work plan, the CIWP, will guide the budget for the district as well as for each school. There's a new introduction of how they calculated this formula. It's called the Opportunity Index. The Opportunity Index basically prioritizes students with higher needs. So you were ranked from anywhere from a 1 to 60. I think the highest scoring school was 52, but it's a ranking of 1 to 60. And Thorp is at 32. So we're in if the highest need school was 52, we're in the top third of needs, which is actually really good for us. Most of the schools on the Northwest side are not, are under 20. So the CPS Opportunity Index, I'm not going to talk about every single one of these because I'm going to share the presentation with you guys, but it talks about community factors, school demographics, and historical school funding. So in the past with student-based budgeting, the small schools did not get a lot of money. This year, they're trying to make up for that. And again, it looks like to me, taking most of those resources from central office, I mean, that's in essence the way that, the way that I would do it as well, making sure that we're spending the money back at the school level. So staffing needs based allocations. So so now every school is going to have centrally funded foundational positions. So that means certified teachers for every core content, reasonable class sizes, access to no fewer than 3 holistic courses. Arts and PE are both required. So everybody has PE twice a week and at least 1 fine arts. Obviously, we have more than that at Thorp. The transparency here is that core/holistic teacher positions will be centrally provided and centrally funded, regardless of what the teachers cost. So the way that we've had to do the budget over the last 12 years has been really factoring, oh my gosh, this person has more experience. That means that they're more expensive. We have to figure out how we're gonna prioritize this budget to make sure that we're, that we have the funds necessary, right? So there was a belief that CPS just wanted younger teachers and was trying to get rid of older teachers. That's not the case, but that is what people thought when they looked at this and they said, "Oh my gosh, your more experienced teachers are costing more money." So CPS definitely wanted to get rid of that. So they got rid of that completely. Now it doesn't matter what the teacher costs. And because you're allocated specific positions. I kind of like this model just because, again, as the principal, it makes my decision making a lot easier, because with the other model, it didn't make it just made it much harder for me because we have an experienced staff. But I think this is something that the district overall has really listened to teachers and listened to principals about. Equity, what we mentioned before about socioeconomic levels, but there's something else that's going on in Chicago, and it's the migrants that are coming in from other countries. A lot of schools were really hurt by an influx of students without resources. So CPS is now looking at the 20th day, which it normally does, but then it's also looking at the 10th day after the beginning of the second semester to provide even more funds for schools at the end of the year. Really is pretty interesting how they're doing this, and again, it is very responsive to schools. I'm very impressed by what they've done, and if they can do it, I'll just be blown away, because it really is a student-centered model here. All right, so for the core classroom teachers, K-8, every school is going to have a minimum of 10 teachers. That makes a big difference in some of the little schools. Or 1 teacher per 26 students if the opportunity index is less than or equal to 30. 1 teacher per 24 students if the opportunity index is 31 to 41. That's where we are. Or 1 teacher per 22 students if the opportunity index is 42 to 52. Right? So again, the schools with the greatest needs are going to get the most resources. And that's a great philosophy to start with. Holistic teachers, these are your specials teachers or interventionists or whatever the school needs. There's going to be a minimum of 3 teachers, which we said PE and art are those 3 teachers. Or for every 5 classroom teachers plus cluster teachers, there's 1 holistic teacher provided. We have 8 holistic positions. I don't know how we have that many, right? But this is one of those things that I'm kind of worried about, because remember, we're a magnet school. Those magnet positions are all gone. Like, they're all now recategorized as holistic positions, right? So we still have the same number of teachers, but it has a new category. So I'm concerned about that in the future, but for right now, everything is good. In terms of, I've already talked about the transparency and equity a couple of times already. So foundational non-teaching positions, AP, clerks, etc. All right. So every student must attend a school with a core administrative operational team, inclusive of a principal, an assistant principal, a clerk. and a school assistant. So this is the way that they're changing these around a little bit. The assistant principal position has never been allocated to the school. It's always come from discretionary funding. So that's a change. The counselor position was allocated for the last couple of years, right? But with this new opportunity index, we are entitled to 2 counselor positions. That's a big deal because we wanted those 2 counselor positions, so it looks like we have them. We get 1 clerk, but we've always bought an additional clerk, right? So that we're going to use our discretionary funds, hopefully for a second clerk, and basically just maintaining what we have. School assistants, we get to keep our school assistant, that's Miss O'Brien. So we do get to keep her. And then athletic directors for high schools. Discretionary funding. So this is where the model is kind of a mix between student-based budgeting and this whole needs-based formula. In discretionary funding, everyone has a base rate of $365 per student, right, in elementary. The additional per student funding is based on the opportunity index. And this is where that opportunity index helped us out quite a bit, because you get a $12 increase per student for each additional OI point above 14. So we have 18 points above 14 times 12 times whatever number of students that we have. That's where they came up with our discretionary funding, and I'll talk about that in a second. The minimum levels for small schools is 140,000, and again, that's a big deal for these schools who have really weathered the storm in the last few years. And then Title I, we don't get, but it's $300 per student. And then there's a poverty per student index that you get an additional $6 per student for schools that are above the 40 on the opportunity index. English language learning staffing, it's basically the same. If you have more than 600 bilingual students, you get 2 free teachers. If you have what we have, between 50 and 599, those seem a little skewed, right? You get 1. So we do have 1 free bilingual teacher. The stipends that we get for those, for the students, we get additional money for tutoring after school, and the ELPT gets a stipend for coordinating all of the bilingual advisory committee meetings and the program. Special education staffing. The special education staffing is based on need. It looks right now like they're not making any changes. I don't know if they're going to be able to sustain that, but for us, it worked out very well. So I'm just going through basically what they're saying about special education and SECA positions, et cetera. In essence, it's what they've had in the past, so I'm not too concerned about that. The case manager position continues this year with 1 case manager for schools with 105 to 174 IEPs. We are, I want to say, Natalie, 100%, but guys, remember, I can't see you, so if you have something that you need to say, just say it.
We are around the 160 range.
Yep, so we're right there. We're right there for 1.5. But so I just want everybody to sort of keep that in the back of your mind. 160 IEPs with 3 cluster programs. Okay, it's a very high needs special education school. So anyway, so we get allocated 1.0 as a case manager. In terms of program staffing, this is something new, and we just barely got it. It's the Restorative Justice Coordinator. It's a brand new position that they've come up with for schools with an opportunity index of 30 plus, and we're at 32, right? So if you have an opportunity index of 30 plus and more than 500 students, you're getting this person who is there to help with discipline. This is one thing that I'm struggling with a little bit, just because for me, the distributive leadership is really important in terms of discipline. Like, everybody should know that they can discipline children to make sure that things are to help them grow, right? So it doesn't have to go right through the office. Oftentimes you'll see Miss Lamani or Miss Morel, working with kids. You'll often see, some of our recess tutors doing the same type of thing. I've told my janitors, I've said, if they do something that's not right, you can tell them, hey, pick this up, clean this up. I want to make sure that school discipline is something that happens throughout the entire school, with staff members knowing that they are that they have the same authority as I do. However, one of the things that we've heard from the teachers is we need some sort of like centralized person to come back to us, let us know what's going on, make the communication, those type of things. This could actually be that. But I'm looking at this and thinking to myself, how often is this person going to be dealing with these issues? And secondly, I'm there in terms of our funding, they really have cut a lot of funding that is discretionary, right? So we're going to lose things like my cadre position, right? So Emilio Arroyo is our cadre, and he basically doesn't have a job next year. I have used him for in-school suspensions, et cetera, those types of things. I probably would use him as this. That's one of the things that I'm probably going to let the LSC know about, but I also want to let you guys know about, and giving him a more defined role. The other nice thing about this is it's similar to what he's making now as a cadre. And since this position isn't guaranteed, right, you got to, like, it's one of those things where deans in other schools make more, like the dean position makes more money. It's not enough for an assistant principal position, and it can't be redefined because it's a federally funded program. They say it has to be this. So a teacher can't qualify for it. So as I was thinking through this, that makes the most sense, but so I just wanted to show that to you. But that's a new position that we're getting, restorative justice coordinator. And like I said, I'll have that person be in charge of communication with you all. The parent communication continues to be through the office and with the teachers. And then, supervising in-school suspensions, those types of things. All right, the instructional core strategies, equity-based staffing. So there will be one interventionist this year. And it's basically because of our bilingual numbers. Every school will get $17,280 for extended day for things like what we're doing right now, the ILT meetings, the BHTs, the MTSS meetings, the climate and culture. We received that last year. So they did not cut it, which is great. So that continues. We also use this money to help fund the cohort programs that we have with St. Francis. Operation staffing. We're a cooking school, so we get one manager, one porter, one cook. In terms of safety and security, we did get an increase. So now we're going to have 2 security guards. But right now, the way that it works, we pay for Angel out of discretionary funds. So now that's being covered by CPS. The additional security guards that we receive because of the mayor's children, I'm assuming will continue, but that's not guaranteed. All right, baseline staff in terms of custodians. Right now, they're still figuring out what the world looks like after Airmark. But what I've heard is that we will continue to have who we have. And I'm trying to push for Luthi. I don't know if you know Luthi or not, but Luthi's day begins at 2:30 and ends at 10:30. And I'm trying to see if I can keep her so that because she goes to Rheinberg after our school. So we're trying to make sure that we keep her with us, but that won't be decided. But the nice thing is we have good staff. We have good custodians, because we know that when we don't have good custodians, we know how different the world can be. We keep our one engineer. Technology support, they're going to continue buying the Chromebooks for the students, which is great, once they become obsolete. And they're going to continue the repair program that they started last year, which also works out well. What does this all mean to Thorp? So here's our budget presentation. I'm going to start with the bottom line. Bottom line is this. At Thorp, all current teaching positions are accounted for. There were 55 teaching positions for school year 24. For school year 25, we were allocated 57 positions. So we have additional positions. There's 33 core positions. There's 8 holistic positions. There's 15 DL positions and 1 bilingual interventionist. All SICA positions were allocated with an additional 2 positions for next year. And here's what I mentioned before. The budget prioritizes teaching staff compared to materials. CPS is committed to decreasing student-teacher ratios across the district, and the implementation of Skyline will allow schools to worry less about providing curricular materials. For some schools, that's a huge deal. That's a wonderful win. For us, it presents some challenges, but some that we can definitely handle, because we're going to be using a little bit more of our internal accounts to make up for the shortfall in discretionary funding, because those extra positions that technically I don't need, I can't close, right? Because I have all the positions I need right now, but I've been allocated a couple of more, right? And I'm not going to go back to the district and say, hey, I don't need these positions, because guess what? We are going to use them, and we're going to figure out a way for our students to benefit from them. But it's at the expense of, we have all this money to spend on stuff. We're going to have a lot less money to spend on stuff, but thankfully we have a pretty healthy internal accounts. So I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue for us. All right, so that's the big gist of everything, but I'm going to give you the breakdown, the way that CPS calculated our numbers. They basically said they expect us to have 823 kids. That's pretty close to what I think we're going to have. We're probably going to be about 830. So that's pretty good. They have us at 35 for cluster enrollment. I know we're going to be at 39 for cluster enrollment. And then in terms of our English language learner enrollment, we're at 73. My guess is we're going to be a little bit higher than that, probably about 80. But the numbers are pretty consistent with what we've seen. And then our opportunity index, the new number, is 32. Overview of positions, I've already mentioned this. There is 1 principal, 1 assistant principal, 1 clerk, 2 counselors, 1 restorative justice coordinator, 33 core classroom teachers, 8 holistic teachers, 1 school assistant, and 15 special education teachers that you'll see in a minute that have been allocated. Everything else we have to buy, right? So you have 15 special education teachers, 30 paraprofessionals, 1 case manager, 1 ELPT, English Learner Program teacher, and then $2,700 for students in the EL program for after school. Flexible funding allocation. So the flexible funding allocation that we receive is $478,163, which sounds like a lot of money, except when you have to factor in all the extra positions that we have, right? So we have Charisse as the second clerk, Maria Sanabria as the free technology coordinator, non-teaching. And then I do want to go back to a second AP. The reason I'd like to go back to a second AP is, Becky's doing a tremendous job, but we have a really high needs school here. There's someone at school basically every single day till 5:30. We have a lot of after school programming, obviously, a lot of meetings with parents of multiple groups, the communication committee, the DL committee, the Friends of Thorp, the PTA, all of those meetings, one of us goes to. We also have a summer program, right? So we have a lot. We're a very responsive school. And, again, this past year, we had lost quite a bit of money, and I had to make some really difficult decisions. But with this budget, it looks like it's something that we can definitely handle. And having that additional AP would be helpful. Not to mention that all of our APs teach as well, right? So Becky has her DL endorsement. She's getting her ESL endorsement. Madonna had her ESL endorsement and her DL endorsement, and they do provide services in the classroom whenever we need to make up either make up time because the teacher's out, or in the case of our ESL students, we had a schedule where they were just providing services for those students. That's going to continue. The other thing that an AP can do is some of those case management functions, which are, like Natalie was saying, we're right at the cusp. And in essence, I mean, it's a lot. It's quite a bit. But that second AP position is something that I'm going to ask the LSC for. So once you put in those 3 positions, we're basically left with about 100 grand. And with those 100 grand here, so this is what this slide says. It's going to leave us about $40,000 for tutors, about the same for supplies, and then I have like a contingency fund of about 20 grand for whatever else might happen. Not a lot of money, but we do have over $1 million in our internal accounts. And again, I don't want to rely on internal accounts for positions. That's why I did not ask for an AP position to be paid from internal accounts. That's crazy, right? Because you can't. That's you don't do that because you can't count on those internal accounts from year to year. So, but I do feel comfortable asking the LSC for supplies and for curricular instruction and things like that, things like recess tutors, those types of things being paid from internal accounts, because we replenish those accounts at about 120,000 every year. All right, so our priorities for this year and for next year, 2024 to 2026, curriculum and instruction, making sure that we're aligned, differentiated in every single subject, that we have inclusive and supportive learning, with an emphasis on our MTSS team that supports all of our students, and also that we have a robust partnership with our parents and our stakeholders through our communication protocols. The ILT guiding management principles, the things that we've talked about in the past and what I use as a principle to figure out decisions. First, maintain positions. In this budget, not even an issue. We're good. So we want to maintain the current positions when possible for stability and coherence. Focus on professional development. As you guys know, I like focusing on you, making sure that you guys get those extra endorsements. It's helpful for you, and it's helpful for us and for our students. So I'd like to continue. Provide adequate instructional materials and equipment. We've never had a problem with not having enough. This year, we're going to have, in addition to all the things that we do have, as you know, I had to basically tell the district, yeah, we love Skyline. We'll be using a lot of it. So they're going to be providing a lot of materials in Skyline for us this year as well. I was telling, again, I know that there's some hesitancy here. I'm the first one to say that I'm hesitant about it. So I do want you guys to take a look at that Skyline curriculum, see what you like about it, right? But we're not abandoning any of the things that we're doing. And then finally, we know that Thorp always has to be getting ready for tomorrow. So those capital improvements are also part of our management principles. When we come up with decisions for budget, this is how I prioritize those budget decisions. All right, so where are the hiccups, or where are the things that we can have some trouble with? This year, they gave us about $200,000 for OST. We're not even going to be able to spend it all. That's going away. So that's not going to happen. Typically, we spend about, I want to say about 150,000 that we use our internal accounts for. We use some of those positions, remember, that we didn't need, and we put that into discretionary funds, right? So we have to sort of like think through some of those things. I don't think we're going to be spending 200,000, but I can easily see us spending about 150. So it's one of those things where we have to keep that in the back of our minds, because I know what the expenses are. We may be cutting down on tutors. It all depends on where I feel, we are. This is the first year that they've used this funding model, so we'll know a little bit more by the end of next year. But I feel pretty confident in that we can manage the storm without too much of a disruption because of our internal accounts. The reason there was an increase in OST funding this year was because they stopped busing for students. We don't know if they're going to be able to do that for next year in terms of giving us more money for after school, right? We'll see. I'm assuming no. In terms of non-personnel budgets, Maria's really good at negotiating these contracts, and she typically gets a package where they give her like 3 years worth of materials and things like that. That makes things a lot easier for us, but I still would assume about $60K for unexpected expenditures. All right. In terms of our proposed professional development and instructional practices, I want to continue the cohorts. They're successful. They're doing well. No school has more dual endorse teachers than we do. I mean, it's a very, very good thing. I want to get to compliance with OLSE. We are after this year, we're just one teacher away from full compliance in reading and math. And I know that after next year, we'll be 100%. We're going to look at our win flex time. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. So if you notice, there were a couple of positions that we had that we're going to be hiring for. I am very leery about hiring. I'm very leery about hiring ever, right? Because anybody that I have to hire, if there's a huge budget shortfall, I have to get rid of. And I hate doing that, right? So I'm very cautious. So I was thinking about those positions. Any positions that we have, I would like to do something a little different. I'd like to look at our win time, and I think I want to cut win time. And in place of win, put something like another Spanish class, so that the kids could actually have Spanish every day. All right, we have 2 Spanish teachers right now. I'd have to take a look at that schedule and figure this out. But in essence, how do we prioritize so that we have someone teaching Spanish every day? And with Skyline, we can do that because there's a Skyline Spanish curriculum that's supposed to be daily. Bringing in bilingual ESL teachers to work with Skyline and work with our students. Now, the general education teachers, you wouldn't get an extra prep. What you would do is you would be freed up to provide additional MTSS services for students in reading and math. That to me sounds like a good use of resources without necessarily, creating a problem that will be very, very hard to get out of if those funds drop. And again, I don't know, but this is a very optimistic budget, right? So that's what I was actually thinking about in terms of like the big changes. Anyway, so we're going to continue focusing on aligning curriculum and developmental summative tasks, especially with authentic audiences. This year has been awesome. You guys have done such a great job bringing parents in, seeing what you guys are doing. These I know they're big performances sometimes. They don't have to be, but most of them have been just absolutely wonderful. And the parents have loved it. The kids have loved it. It goes back to those whole meaningful, memorable moments that I talk to you guys about all the time. We're going to continue focusing in on that. I want to use David in more of a capacity of that, like, freeing him up completely and just saying, I want you working with those summative tasks with the different grade levels to get a little bit less off, a little bit more off of your plate, while still making sure that we're incorporating with the subject matter that you guys are teaching. Next year, we have the soft looping again, which that means that, in math, you'll be teaching 2 grade levels. In science and social studies, you'll be teaching 2 grade levels. In reading, you'll be teaching 2 grade levels. Everybody that's departmentalized will be teaching 2 grade levels. So it just goes back to normal. We stopped because of the reading curriculum. This year, one teacher has done 1 grade level for each. Next year, you can share plans. And I really do think that that's a really good model because it prepares us for the unexpected, as you guys know. And then again, continuing our professional development opportunities in Wilson Reading, making sure not only our special education teachers, but also all of our primary teachers, continuing our focus on problem-based learning, and writing and math conferencing for all teachers is something I want to really focus on for next year. Capital projects, forget capital projects. After this whole auditorium thing, I'm not really looking at spending any money for a while because I don't know where we're going to be with this budget. So that's going to take a back seat until we figure out exactly where we are. I've sort of said what it means to Thorpe, but I'm just reiterating here so we have it on one slide. The current CPS budget provides adequate funding for everybody, for all current DL and general education positions. That may change depending on the CTU CPS contract, but based on what I've seen, where there's such an emphasis on providing more teachers, I think CTU is going to like it, but who knows? All reading and math interventionists for K-8 are funded, which is great. I mean, the current ones that we have, right? And then if we do this little Spanish program, we'll have even more interventionists. The difficulty in that program is going to be the scheduling and trying to figure out what we're going to do. I'm aiming for every day. Most likely we're not going to be able to get every day, but we'll be able to figure something out where we'll have extra support. And again, the extra support comes from the general education teachers that typically work with the students. Recess/classroom tutors will be funded from our internal accounts. Additional supervision may be necessary because as we cut some of those positions, that goes towards that whole restorative justice coordinator, the administrators, and the counselors may be helping out with some of the recess and lunch duty stuff. Adequate bilingual ESL positions for all grade bands are funded, but an additional IP would also help support any holes that we might have in that programming, as well as helping out with summer and after school activities. Average funds of about $20,000 per month continue coming in internal accounts because of our aftercare program. We want to make sure that continues. We haven't had an increase in 10 years, right? I don't want to increase it, but we'll take a look and see what this looks like after this year's budget. Once we have this meeting next year, I'll let you know. All right. I want to continue the shared low incidence teacher, although this hasn't really happened as much as I'd like. We were trying to get 4 teachers for those 3 cluster programs. Having an additional AP will help with that as well because it provides more resources in order to make that happen. But it's going to be tricky. Want to continue all our free after-school programming for students, and based on the budget that I've seen, student fees can be kept at the same levels. So $55 fee plus a $25 tech insurance fee. All right, so here are the next steps. I've already spoken to the LSC, primarily. They're going to get this recording as well. They're going to vote. Jen, I think you guys are voting on Friday, either Thursday or Friday. I've met with my chief. She gave me her approval already. And then we will be able to get everything done and uploaded by the 26th. The big difference this year is that we also have to give LSC the CIWP as well. So we're going to do CIWP and budget. So if we get budget already taken care of, we'll be able to go right into CIWP right afterwards. So we have a little bit more time than what they told me originally, but we have to have everything done by May 3rd, but in reality, April 26th. All right, questions, comments?
Hi, Mr. Toledo. It's Tracy Blair. Sorry. Thank you for this. This is really helpful to understanding everything. And maybe I missed it, but is this slideshow available for us to look at?
Yep, I'm going to share it with you guys.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Hi, Mrs. Toledo, Sophia. I just wanted to say, from just having heard what the mayor's philosophy was on education, looking at more trauma-informed, student-centered, I feel like this must have inspired the new budget and all that opportunity index. So it's really cool to see that in practice.
I'm surprised. I'm like, seriously, if they can pull this off, I mean, they still have a $400 million shortfall compared to this year. So who knows, right? But it definitely shows that they're thinking about it, right? And that they're trying to do their best. And the fact that they're investing that money away from central office and into the schools is a big deal. All right. Did you guys have any questions? I mean, I'm sure that um, that whole Spanish thing, that's something that we got to work out. We're gonna try to figure out scheduling this year to see if we can make that happen. The whole goal really is to provide more MTSS support. That is the ultimate, where we're headed. But I was just trying to figure out a model because right now flex sometimes works and sometimes it doesn't. I want to give it a little bit more consistency, and I know that by providing it with like a class where the students are responsible for work, it definitely will make a difference. And then freeing up as many teachers as possible, to provide additional support is going to be helpful. On paper, it sounds awesome. The devil's going to be in the details trying to figure it out. Anything else?
Mr. Toledo, I'm curious because I feel like that's great that there's these new positions. And I wonder like how soon those would be posted, because we're probably going to have competition for candidates if other schools are also getting all these additional positions.
Some schools received additional positions, some had cuts. Like, because our opportunity index is so high, we received a lot more. But most of the schools on the Northwest side actually received cuts. Not dramatic, but cuts nevertheless. But you're right. The sooner we get it out there, the better. That's why I wanted to sort of like define it. And a bilingual ESL endorsed teacher doesn't mean that they're only bilingual ESL endorsed. In fact, they have to have something else. But I can use them, and the curriculum's already been provided. So it's a fairly simple thing. And if we have to, like, the way my brain works is, who knows how long we'll have these positions? How could we continue this program even without necessarily having people teachers in front of them? It would probably be like, ancillary staff that we might be able to work out. But I don't want to think 3 years ahead. I want to just focus on this year for right now, for 24, 25. But I'm always thinking about what's going to happen if I lose X, Y, and Z. So just know that that's in the back of my mind. And this is one of those things that makes that a little bit more manageable if that were to happen. Okay. I am going to stop talking. And was there anything else, Jen, that we had on the agenda?
No, I think, well, I thought that, I don't know, are we asking for their opinion?
Yes, I am.
I thought that's what we were, okay.
I
So
do.
that, and then I know that maybe, Chrissy had a couple questions about things, in the school in general, things coming up. Do you want to answer questions and hang up, or you're going to stay on for?
No, I'll stay on. I'm just, so
okay.
I'll make sure. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess one thing we were looking for was your opinion on spending the $478,000 on an additional clerk, an additional AP, and a TechCo. Does anyone have any feelings on that or opinions?
This is Tracy. I think it makes great sense. I think that's money well spent.
This is Joy. I second that opinion.
I agree too. I think there's a lot of work that goes into those positions. So any additional support that they have is going to be positive.
Yeah. So, oh, sorry, anyone else? Chrissy agrees. Yeah, so I guess it's basically in lieu of, some of the supplies or like curriculum or things we need. But I feel like we have a lot curriculum wise, and there's so much free out there online. I mean, I supplement with good stuff all the time. So, and I definitely think we need another AP and to continue to have TechCo and another clerk for sure.
Okay.
Okay, so Are there any other questions or comments or thoughts on?
I know I'm going to need help with whatever. So we have to look and we'll see what this looks like, because we also get surprises over the summer, right? Like people move, people retire, etc. And in terms of like figuring out, like I really need a lot of help figuring out that whole additional class to provide support for MTSS. Right. That's one. Yeah.
Oh, I just said fun. If you're stopping at that, I was talking.
Oh yeah. No. So that's the one thing that I definitely need this team to help me out with, because again, it's going to be a little tricky, and there's going to be some groups that are going to be like, no, we want our flex, and there's going to be other groups that are going to be like, wait, this doesn't, so it definitely is going to be a challenge, and that goal of having bilingual, like we're not a dual language school. I don't like dual language the way that it's implemented in most schools, because it's typically to help non-native English speakers learn English. And my idea behind dual language is helping kids who know English to learn another language. That's a completely different philosophy than the way that dual language is implemented in CPS and in most of the country. Yeah.
Mr. Toledo,
Mhm.
how much flex time do most of the grade levels have? Because I know third and fourth grade, we don't have a flex time.
Yeah. It's typically about 40 minutes.
Oh,
About
40 minutes.
Yep.
Okay.
So we're looking at about a 40-minute class in essence. And then trying to figure out how to make that happen, because our schedules are very, if you're self-contained, it's fairly easy. Like K1, 2, that's easy to do, but 3rd through 8th, that's hard.
So at one time, or the other day, you had said that you thought we could just do that with Spanish for like 2 grade levels or 4. Are you hoping or thinking we could do it with the whole school?
Eventually, if we can figure out a model where it would work, like COVID taught us that there's ways to do this without, if we think outside of the box a little bit. But I can't see it school wide. No, if we could do it with 2 grade levels, I'd be ecstatic.
Yeah, so then that would be a conversation for another day.
Yep.
With the team about like, is it best to start young, or is it 5th
Right.
or 8th before high school?
You got it.
Most middle schools do 7th and 8th or 6th, 7th or something. But yeah, so that's a talk for another time, I know, but just
Yep.
putting that out there.
What do you guys think of that idea, though?
I think if you do want to begin that, which I personally think that's a pretty decent idea, especially with like, let's be honest, like 50 to 80% of the United States speak Spanish. Like, I think that we should have that in our curriculum. I do think that we need to bring the Spanish teachers in to have that discussion to see like what can realistically be done, because I think they're kind of the experts in like our students in speaking Spanish.
Yeah, for sure.
I think this would also be another layer of appeal for our school for us to retain students if there was an extra, because there's other specialty schools, right, and academic centers, and I think if families felt like, oh, when in addition to getting good instruction, they're also learning, they're becoming more fluent in Spanish. So I think that would also be an appeal for us as a school.
Sorry, I don't know the answer to this, but do the upper grades already use a set curriculum for Spanish class?
Well, Skyline is the curriculum. So I know Damoka's using Skyline and Amanda is doing her own thing, but we would probably use Skyline and then supplement, because Skyline is very good as an introduction. But my goal is hopefully, first off, we're going to see how we did on this biliteracy thing. I think we did very well. but we'll see. But our goal is really, at least oral fluency by 8th grade, like where the kids know how to speak Spanish by 8th grade, every kid. That's tough. That's good. We're a few years away, and a lot of like these types of ideas. If the school thinks that it's a worthwhile goal, all right. I think it is. I think most of you guys see that as well. And I think most of our parents do too. It's just like I said, the devil's in the details. How do we make this happen with the resources that we have?
Does Skyline offer primary curriculum for
It does.
Spanish?
Yes, it does.
Well, I've always said that I think we should have a regular Spanish class for the upper grades, just like a lot of the, middle schools in the suburbs or wherever. So obviously I'm all for it. And I love the idea actually of the teachers being freed up for MTSS, if that can work. Yeah.
All right, cool. Great. Is there anything that you guys have been thinking about that I haven't, like, in terms of this budget?
I do have a question. Library, are we looking into hiring a librarian? I know that that's like a big CTU ask. I don't know how that's going to go with CPS, but I know we as like a school really enjoyed our librarian, and like we have a massive library. Are we still considering doing library, or?
That's a great question. Joy, you know what the problem is though? It's our space. Like,
of course.
what do we, how do we make that happen? But I kind of like that idea for what we were just talking about. Right? If that makes sense. If we had a librarian and we would have, again, it's not a prep for the teachers. It's a the students get dropped off. That teacher then goes and provides MTSS services for other students. That could work. I never even thought about that, but we do have some flexibility there. That was a great idea. Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.